Before Imaginarium Theater was released, most Genshin players believed that we would never get another endgame mode. But after its rocky start, most players have grown to enjoy Imaginarium Theater as a complement to the Spiral Abyss. And with other Hoyoverse titles consistently adding new endgame modes, as long as you're not a jaded cynic, it seems only a matter of time until Genshin adds another one too. And with new pre-release information that has started circling the internet, we have good reason to believe that this new endgame mode is coming sooner than later. So in this video, we're going to break down what it could possibly be, as well as how it would affect the meta if it turns out to be true. Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. All right, so the rumor is that it will be a brand new Abyss, but a different kind of Abyss. In this Abyss, you will start with no energy. This does immediately bring to mind this new event that we've had where you also start with no energy. So on first glance, one might think that they're just making an educated guess based on this event, but there's some other things to look at too. It's talked about as having 6 floors and, more relevantly, 3 teams. 3 teams is huge, and that's going to greatly affect how the meta will shift, which we'll talk about in a minute. I'm going to make a tier list of how this will make characters better and worse. The other one is it's mostly boss rush. In particular, it said world bosses. So a lot of people have said this is similar to Deadly Assault in Zenless Zone Zero. I personally hope that it's not just world bosses, because world bosses can be in the Abyss. I would like to see it also be the weekly bosses. I just think the weekly bosses are so much fun, and it'd be really cool to have the final challenge of the whole thing be one of the weekly bosses. I would just love to see that. They're such unique fights, and yeah, they can be a little gimmicky, but I think that they're really fun. Be a good chance for them to revisit some of the old ones. I went back to play Ajdaha, and I was like, it's crazy how little HP he has these days. Like, have you guys gone and played Ajdaha recently? Like, that guy used to be hard. So yeah, there's some very interesting things to discuss here. 3 teams, I personally think is good for the game. I think 2 teams is good, but this is a game about collecting and building characters. Having to use more characters is great. Imaginarium Theater took that to the absolute extreme, but having to build 3 meta teams, it makes sense as like a next level endgame. It's much better, in my opinion, than just making a floor 13 and having the HP be even higher. We could be on floor 14 right now with the amount of HP inflation that we've had, but I digress. I just think 3 teams will make it so you can focus on an additional DPS, and it probably means you're gonna have to build 4 or 5 teams on your account overall to really challenge the endgame. And since we're looking at endgame, like, this is the thing you're working towards. You want it to be an achievement when you get there. You want it to feel like your roster is being utilized, like your account is being pushed forward. And whereas Imaginarium Theater does feel that way to a degree, in a lot of ways it sort of feels like you're just checking boxes, leveling up characters until they can be used. Whereas having to build 3 really good teams gives an additional goal and incentive to really invest in more characters beyond your main 2 to 3 teams that you might already have. Now you need 3 or 4 or 5 to cover whatever different checks that there might be. The downside of that is if it is mostly boss rush, that means single target most likely gets a big boost unless they do something creative, like they have bosses and also put additional enemies in there at the same time. That's something that they haven't done yet, but I could see them doing, and I don't know why they wouldn't, frankly. Maybe it's something to do with the mobile game not being able to load that many assets on the screen at the same time. But I feel like since these bosses are in the open world as well, and there's so much more going on there than in the Abyss, that maybe they can handle it. But I don't know. I'm worried for AoE characters in a mode like that. Genshin has recently very much favored like a little bit of AoE, but not really. It's mostly been single target and very much multi-wave. Being able to keep up multi-wave damage has been really favored in Genshin throughout the end of Fontaine and all of Natlan. The other big concern I have is starting with no energy. Like, that's crazy. We experienced it with this event, and I think you'll see what I mean when we go through all the characters, and I'll zero in on this more and really talk about what it means to start with no energy, how we're going to build differently, which characters are going to be viable or not. It's going to really hurt some characters' viability, I think, or at least make them significantly weaker. I don't think I like it. I think I like starting with energy because ER is naturally built into the system by you're going to run out of energy after you use your burst. So it's built into the game mechanics already. Like starting with full energy feels balanced because you still have to put a ton of ER for characters that need their burst. Now, it's going to be interesting. We'll talk about it more with the characters. Overall though, I think more endgame is good, and I think another Abyss with 3 teams, even if it is just mostly boss rush, I think that is good for the game. It's not the ideal form of endgame that I would want. I would want something a bit more creative, something more dungeon crawly, maybe with puzzles, maybe I'm thinking dungeons, puzzles, co-op, loot, floors, unlocking buffs, and interacting with the exploration nature of Genshin. Something like those like capstone level ups that we used to have to ascend your world level or to send the adventure rank where you went through that dungeon. Unfortunately, it was always the same dungeon, but I feel like that sort of idea was really, really cool, and I feel like they could expand on that in a new endgame mode. That's the ideal form of endgame that I would like to see, but since I do feel like Genshin is sort of lacking in endgame modes, I will take this. This is an improvement over what we have, even though it's not the ideal thing that I would like to see. Okay, so moving on to how I think it will benefit different characters. We're going to go with a format of gets better, gets slightly better, stays the same, gets worse, gets way worse. I don't really want to make a tier list for power or viability overall until we actually play it, but based on what we know so far, the big changes is more single target, starting with no energy. So we're going to go through the characters and talk about how this affects them. If you played Yeonsan in the recent event, you know how difficult it can be to get her first rotation up and running, and she needs her burst to give her buff. She does work with a bunch of characters, and she is, you know, a top meta character for some teams, but I think her restrictive nature and requiring her burst will make her slightly worse in the new endgame mode, especially the burst thing. Even on Fav, it's annoying to charge her up for the first rotation. Varessa does not need her energy. She's not strictly single target focused, but she is good in single target, and she uses a low contested team, being Yeonsan, Chevreuse. It's not super contested. Not a lot of characters want that team, so that will allow her to free up other units on your account. I think she's already great though in the Abyss. I don't necessarily think that anything about this makes her better in relation to some other characters who get worse, sure, but I think overall I think I'm gonna put her and stay the same for now. Maybe we'll adjust. Mizuki gets way worse. I mean, I could put her in stay as bad as well, but I think she also gets way worse. Stays bad is mostly for characters that aren't really affected, but they're already bad, so kind of who cares. But no, Mizuki gets actually worse. She's only good in AoE, and so this mode will hurt her viability even more. Not being able to swirl, being against bosses is not good. Plus, like, does she need her burst? I mean, she needs her burst to heal, so like, geez, it's looking rough for Mizuki. I think Lanyan gets slightly better. There's 2 reasons for this. One, you're going to need a lot more supports than you are going to need more DPSs. So DPSs, you'll need another, you know, 3rd or 4th or 5th DPS to add to your account to flesh things out to beat 3 really hard modes. But for each of those new teams, you need 3 more, you know, 2 to 3 more supports. And Lanyan is a great support that I feel a lot of people maybe don't use because they're already using Kazuha and Shilonen, or they're already using whoever. And although I don't think she'll become like super popular, you know, being a free character with VV, shield, EM buff at C4, I feel like she will get slightly better. Citlali, I think the boss rushing nature makes her slightly better, but she also is very burst reliant. So she already kind of struggles to build enough ER. I'm gonna overall put her in stays the same. I think it's a wash. She's so strong that I think it's a wash, but being pretty burst reliant is gonna make her more annoying to use. So sort of 1 pro, 1 con kind of balances out. We'll put her in stays the same. Moika, this will make her more reliant on Shilonen. Right now, I sort of find that Shilonen is an inconsequential slot on the team. Yes, it's helpful for quality of life. If you end a chamber with Moika's burst, then the next chamber you start at 0 energy. It's nice to have Shilonen to quickly power up the fighting spirit, but at the same time, I find it's not a huge deal because sometimes you get 1 or 2 charge attacks out and then she has enough fighting spirit just from Citlali. But this does make her more reliant on Shilonen, so that would make her worse. However, given that this is a boss rush mode and she just does a ridiculous amount of DPS, having potentially even bigger HP sponge bosses will make her huge damage shine even more. So I'm going to overall put her, it stays the same, kind of similar to Citlali. Auroron, burst reliant, but he's another flexible support that, you know, holds scroll, and he's good for a bunch of characters. So I'm going to put him and stays the same. He also can forego, he likes to build for damage, but he could theoretically forego more damage to be more of a dedicated buffer and, you know, run ER Sands plus Fav Warbow or Elegy. So overall, I think he pretty much stays the same. Again, positive and negative cancel each other out. I think Chaska gets a massive, massive bump. Not burst reliant, single target, that's where Chaska shines. So I think this endgame mode will be excellent for her. She has some of the highest DPS. She's very comfy and easy to play. I think she gets a big improvement. I think she's already great, but I think she gets a big improvement with this mode. I think I kind of want to put Veressa here. I kind of feel like she improves more compared to these, because if you use her with Chevre's team, that easily frees up more units. She's not burst reliant. So yeah, I think that's fine. Xilonen, I think Xilonen gets better. Skill reliant. Sure, you need her burst for healing, but you don't always need to burst the first rotation anyways. Bursting second rotation is totally fine, and she gets basically all of her value just from her skill. So I definitely think she gets better. Plus, you need even more supports. So yeah, all things point to Xilonen being even better in this mode than she currently is. Unless I'm misremembering, man, I haven't played Keqing in a long time. I don't think she needs her burst to make her kit function. It's just like a one shot of damage, and most of her damage comes from her skill. Can we say she gets better though? If you have her C6, she does good damage. She can hold scroll. You're gonna need more characters. Does that make her better? I don't know. That's really hard. Let me know what you think. I'm gonna put her there for now, but maybe she does get slightly better. But then I feel like, yeah, it's like you gotta think about it as she and Xilonen get better, but their starting place is so different, right? Keqing's starting place was way down low. Shilonen's starting place was almost at the top. Now she's like an absolute top meta support. So even though she gets better, she already started so high. So that's why she still stays in this tier, if that makes sense. Keqing, same as Chaska. He is mostly focused on on single target damage, and he doesn't need his elemental burst on mode. Like he does, but he can use it second rotation on. Like that's fine. I don't know if he's not as bad in AoE as Chaska, so I think he doesn't improve as much as Chaska does, but he still definitely gets better. Mualani also gets better. She doesn't need her burst. Again, she loves her burst, but if it's not ready right away, it's fine. And she is not as single target like focused as these two, but she also doesn't like spread out enemies at all. So bosses, she can usually get her most consistent damage out. So I think Mualani gets better in this mode. Emily also flexible, relies on skill. All the things we said about the other one, she gets better. I feel like in theory, Sethos gets a bit better, but he still needs ER usually. Yeah, Sethos needs his ER. It's also been a long time since I played Sethos. And being an aggravate character, it was already looking rough. He's in a bad spot here. I don't think Sijuin, I'm gonna put her in stays bad. I don't think she really doesn't do anything still. I kind of want to put Sethos here too, but I know some people, I'm gonna make like the super dedicated Sethos enjoyers really mad. Are you too mad if I do that? We'll just leave him and get slightly worse because he needs energy to do his stuff. Chlorant, same as Veressa, she doesn't need her skill, or she doesn't need her burst right away. She's a bit more flexible than Veressa. She doesn't do as much damage, but she's a bit more flexible. She can take the Chevre's team and give the other teammates the good supports, like the more contested supports. Chevre's is a great support, but she's not super contested. And yeah, not being reliant on burst makes her quite good. Arlecchino, I would say that this is a double win for Arlecchino. Not being reliant on her burst and having a single target focused, this makes Arlecchino like a decent bit better. I almost want to put her in gets way better, but I think I'm just going to go with slightly better. But it is like really good for Arlecchino. One of the things she lacks is like a bigger AoE like Veressa and Chlorant. She also has a lot of team flexibility, and just being focused on one boss, again, assuming that's what it is, which, you know, is the assumption, makes her, you know, more valuable. But again, her AoE isn't as bad as Chaska's is, so I'm putting her here. Chiori, I definitely think Chiori gets better. Her damage is more single target, and, you know, needing to fill more team slots is good. She's still, you know, is as restrictive as ever, but especially if you have C1, you know, single target plus being an off-field support makes her better. Gaming, he is burst reliant, and he is really good in AoE. Being burst reliant is going to hurt him. You're going to have to take time to charge up his burst, and he still is very good in boss rush, so he'll still be a very good character, but yeah, being burst reliant is going to hurt. Shenyun, same thing. She's very burst reliant, and she wants to build attack. C1 is going to gain a lot of value to charge up her burst for that first time. She is better in single target, like her buffing works better in single target, but overall, I think being so burst reliant makes her worse. Chevreuse definitely gets better. Not being burst reliant is huge, and she's still good against bosses. And yeah, you need 3 teams, so one of them being an overload team is very powerful. Very, very powerful. If you've played overload, you know how powerful it is to choose an overload team and then realize you basically have all your supports still available for the second half, because you don't even need to use Bennett usually with a Chevreuse team. Like if it's Clorand or Varessa, you don't need Bennett, you don't need Shalona, you don't need Farina, you don't need Citlali, you don't need anyone. You know, you just throw on your other characters, you know, and you're good to go. Navia, she is burst reliant, but she also is single target. So I think overall it kind of balances each other out, and she is gonna about stay the same. It's gonna be more annoying to charge up her burst, for sure. For sure. You're probably gonna have to invest in more batteries or more Favonius or funnel particles more into her, especially with a Shalonen team, because you need that burst for crystallizes. But she is really much better in single target than she is in AoE. So overall, I think she's going to stay the same. Charlotte, I'm going to put her in stays bad because Escoffier just makes her basically worthless. I love you, Charlotte. I don't mean it. Farina, I guess we have to say she gets slightly worse, don't we? With Escoffier, she is arguably the best buffer in the game. We haven't played with Escoffier yet. We don't know for sure. Especially after Skirk, though, she's probably going to be the best buffer in the game, but being burst reliant does make her worse. So even if, like, I'm not saying she's going to be bad. Far from it. I'm not saying she's going to be bad. But she does get slightly worse because she needs her burst. And it's going to be a little bit hard to charge up because it's a pretty expensive burst. Neuvillette. I would put him in gets worse because he's not as good in single target. Like, he is an AoE god. And he's solid in single target, but he's an AoE god. That being said, not needing his burst means you can start doing damage right away. But you still need Farina's burst. But he can help charge up Farina's burst with his skill. I'm going to say he gets slightly worse overall because Farina really wants her burst, and he's better in single in AoE than he is in single target. And if it's all boss rush, it's just not his strength. I still think he's going to be broken though. Like, hear me right. I don't think he's going to be bad in this mode. It's just that compared to where he was, he's going to be slightly worse. That's all. Wriothesley, he's going to be slightly better. Single target, doesn't need his burst on the first rotation. Good. From an A, stays bad. Lynette, she's a good theater character. Very good Imaginarium theater character. I think there's too many Animo supports for her to shine in this. Linny, I think he stays the same, maybe slightly better. He's like a little bit better in single target than in AoE, and he doesn't need his burst on the first rotation too badly. I mean, he kind of, I don't know. Let me know what you think. I'm gonna put him in stays the same, but let me know what you think. Kirara, I think he stays the same. Does aggravate gain value in this mode because you have less options? Maybe. I mean, she's not burst reliant. Maybe she gets a little better. I don't know. I'm gonna put her in stays the same. Pave stays bad. Baiju, if the new mode is like extra dangerous and damaging, I could see him getting better, but as is, I'm gonna put him in stays the same. Mika stays bad. Dia, she stays the same. She's a skill reliant support, but not like crazy impactful, so I think she stays the same. Yao Yao needs her burst to heal, kind of, but she's still fine with just her skill, so she's gonna stay the same. I think Alhaitham, I think Hyper Bloom gets a bit stronger with single target, but being burst reliant does hurt Alhaitham. You just lose damage because he needs those mirrors. So yeah. Faruzan gets slightly worse for sure. Very burst reliant, very energy hungry character. Gonna be a pain to charge, especially if she doesn't have any front loaded particle generation. It's her burst that generates a lot of particles, so she definitely gets worse. And as a result, Wanderer gets worse. Also, you could argue that Wanderer is sort of an AoE oriented character. I don't know if people agree with that or not. That's kind of what I think. Obviously Shao gets worse as well because of both of these. And Shen Yun is getting worse, so yeah. All of these are getting, I don't know if I want to put way worse, but they definitely get noticeably worse. I think Layla stays bad. Nahida, I think she stays the same. She doesn't need her burst, but I think the teams that use her either use their burst or use AoE. So I think overall, if anything, she gets worse by proxy. She herself doesn't get worse. Candace definitely gets worse. She's burst reliant. Nilou gets way worse. She's way better in AoE than single target, and being single target is gonna suck. Yeah, she doesn't need her burst, but 0 times 0 is still 0, or 0 times 2, or 0 times anything is still 0. I'm going to put Sino here. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about Dory. I think Kale gets worse. She was basically mostly only used in Nilou teams and some Hyper Bloom teams, and now her burst isn't even ready. So yeah, that's worse. Tighnari doesn't need his burst right away, and he's good in only in single target. So kind of like Chaska, I feel like he's going to get way better. That doesn't mean he's going to be top tier. I just think one of the main reasons I always have him down low is because he has literally no AoE. And if that is the kind of mode this is, then he'll get better. If this is the kind of mode that still does have some AoE, which is possible, but based on it being boss rush, I think it's safe to assume it's going to be mostly single target. So I'm going to put him in gets way better. Heizo stays bad. Kuki, again, I want to put her in gets better because she just needs her skill, but Hyper Bloom is reliant on Yelan, and Yelan is very, very burst reliant. If you have her on Fav, it's relatively easy to charge up her burst, but it's going to cut into her damage. That being said, she's a very single target oriented character, and so that's a buff for her. So overall, I'm going to put her here as it cancels itself out, because you build a lot of ER on her anyways. Again, similar to Shenhe, it makes her C1 much more valuable. Yeah. Ayato, he definitely gets worse. Very AoE focused character. Since we did Yelan, let's put Xingqiu here too. Yaimiko, I would say she gets slightly better. Like, yeah, your burst is AoE, and yeah, you don't have your burst, but your single target turrets are the main thing, and being able to just set those up right away is good. That's going to make her slightly better. While we're here, we'll put Fischl there as well. Maybe Fischl gets way better. I'm going to put her there, and a lot of people think that Fischl is like a top 10 character, and I completely disagree. I think Fischl is like solid, but she's nowhere near a top 10 character. But I think single target only, not needing any energy to get started, creating energy for your team, I think Fischl gets way better. So she might, I still don't think she'll be a top 10 character after this, but I do think she'll be like a really good, solid character. And given that there's 3 teams, being able to throw her in a random team increases her value as well. So overall, yeah, Fischl stocks going up. Maybe she will be a top 10 character after this. I still doubt it, but maybe. Yunjin, I think her energy issues make her worse. Even though the single target buffing that she provides is better, the energy issues still hurt her more than that. Shenhe, on the other hand, isn't as burst reliant. Like, yeah, her burst is good, but she provides energy. She just needs to use her skill to use her main buff. So I think Shenhe gets better from this. I do. Goro and Ito, they are so energy hungry, and their single target damage is not that great. I think they get worse. That's a rough bean. Toma, he needs a lot of energy. I think he gets worse. Aloy stays bad. Kujo Sara, she does give a lot of her buff just from her skill, so I think she stays the same. Let's see. Kokomi, I think she gets slightly worse. Her mono Hydra teams do want her burst. Her other team is Nilou. She's already crept out of Ayaka freeze. I think this is not helping her cause at all. Raiden also is not helped by this. Starting with no energy is really rough for Raiden, because she has no energy refund mechanics until you get her burst up the first time, which is the hardest part. So unfortunately, I think that this definitely makes Raiden worse. Yeah, if she could refund energy with just her skill, then that could be something else. They should buff Raiden to give more energy refund from her skill. That'd be really cool. I think Saya stays bad. I think Yoimiya gets better. She's not reliant on her burst, and it's all single target. So similarly to Tighnari, Yoimiya gets quite a bit better. Again, assuming it's all single target. For a lot of these characters, if it turns out that there's some AoE in this, then the tier list is still valuable because you can hear the reasoning behind everything, but I have to go based on what we have. That's what's fun. Ayaka, she definitely gets worse. I think she's good versus bosses, but huge energy burst, she gets worse for sure. Kazuha, I think it gets slightly better. I think it's similar to Shalonen, where you need more supports. That being said, there's no grouping in boss rush, but he also doesn't need his burst. So overall, I think he still gets slightly better. I think you're gonna find even more uses for Kazuha. Yanfei, I'm gonna put her in stays bad. Same with Eula. Bad or super niche. Because Rosaria, you can use her for something, blah, blah, blah. Hu Tao definitely gets better. Similar to Yoimiya Arlecchino, just needs her skill to do damage. Very single target oriented. Yay for Hu Tao. Ganyu, I think, she does a lot of damage just from her charge shot. She's still not that great, but I think overall she stays the same. Freeze and melt. You do want her burst in the freeze. I don't know. It depends on how good the freeze stuff is versus the melt stuff. If the freeze stuff is better, then maybe she gets slightly worse because she wants the burst. If the melt stuff is still better, then she stays the same. I think the freeze stuff is going to be better. So I'm going to put her in get slightly worse. Not only does she want to use her burst, but Farina does, Escoffier does. So she's going to get slightly worse. Albedo. I think he's going to stay the same. Maybe he gets slightly better, actually. Yeah, like Kachina. It's the same, it's the same reasoning for Kachina and Chiori, of course. Just uses his skill. More space in your roster for a weird flex character. Xinyan stays bad. Diona, she needs her burst, so she gets worse. Yeah. Zhongli, I think Zhongli gets a bit better. You have more room for other supports, only needs his skill, flexible, he ticks all the boxes. Childe gets worse, only he likes AoE big time, so that sucks for him. Chi-Chi, Mona loves her burst, so that's, I would put her in stays the same because she does have flexibility, like she works with a bunch of teams, but she really wants her burst, so starting with no energy is gonna suck for Mona. Keqing, she gets worse. She loves AoE. She really doesn't care much for single target. She doesn't need her burst right away, but Xiangling, she gets worse for sure. Not starting with your burst is not good, and she already needs a lot of energy, so that's rough, buddy. Diluc, I think Diluc gets a little bit better. He prefers, like, he's still not that great, but it's easier to do his plunge stuff on a boss than it is in like AoE. So I'm gonna go with slightly better. Jean, she likes her burst, and Vivi, so I think she gets worse. Burst is too important. Klee gets slightly worse, I think. She's not, her burst does good damage, and she doesn't need it, but she's mostly an AoE character, so worse. Venti gets way worse for obvious reasons. Sucrose gets better because she can buff just with her skill, and you don't need grouping. Maybe she gets way better. I mean, I think she's already really broken. I think people really underrate her, but I think she definitely gets better. And multi-wave is less important because it's a boss. Yeah, that's another thing to consider for Animo units. Did I put Kazuha and stays the same? No, I didn't. I put him in gets better. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that because multi-wave is going to be less important, so Animo can shine a bit better. Ningguang, she is a single target character, so I guess she gets slightly better. We're almost done. Chongyun gets slightly better because he can more easily enable Moika, but he does have his burst. He needs his burst. So does Ningguang. I think maybe both of them get worse. They want their burst too badly. Beidou gets way worse. She's really not great in single target, and she needs her burst. Razor stays bad. Kaya gets worse. Bennett, he does want his burst, but you can just build more ER on him. Use an ER substat like what's it called, Skyward Blade, and ER Sands, and you can still essentially have the same-ish thing. He's a good battery, so I think he stays the same. I think he stays top meta. Noelle gets worse. She needs her burst, and she likes AoE, so she gets worse. Lisa gets worse, and Barbara and Amber stay bad. This is my final verdict for how characters will be affected by the new endgame mode if it is mostly a single target mode, like a boss rush mode, and you start with no energy. So this, if you think of my current tier list and then think of this as like adjustments to that tier list, right? It's not the tier list of how good, like I'm not saying Tighnari will be top tier. I still expect Moika to be top tier. I still expect Novelette to be pretty much top tier, probably. I'm feeling maybe Novelette. I'm gonna sneak Novelette back into stays the same because he doesn't need his burst. He could just not use Farina, use someone else, or he helps charge up Farina. So I'm gonna sneak him back into stays the same. I think he's still gonna be, well, it's single target, not AoE. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Subscribe if you enjoy the video, and if you don't want to do that, that is totally fine. Just watching the video has been more than enough. Thanks so much. Bye for now.